This episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. BREWtally Speaking Podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREW and get 10% off your total order. Now on to the show.
All right, sorry, man. We're in the studio finishing doing a new record. So
Already?
yes, sir.
Well, son of a bitch, that's you just put out Black Sheep like a week ago.
Yes, we did.
How long-
yeah,
How long have you been sitting on that one then for it to be coming out already and then working on another one?
we did Black Sheep in November of 19, and I was gonna put it out on my own, like in May of 2020, and then once the tour schedule fell apart, we were like kind of just figuring out what we wanted to do, and then we ended up randomly connecting with that label, and then I was like, all right, this could be cool. So then we kind of just waited for their timing on everything else. But I mean, yeah, I sat on that one for about a year, which was a long process, but yeah.
I don't think, I know we've made mention about it on this podcast before, but I don't know that people sometimes understand how long you guys have to sit on records to correlate with a tour announcement, with a, we're putting it out in this quarter of the year because we think it's going to do better or whatever, like all the weird intangibles that shouldn't really fucking matter about putting out music.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you're essentially not, it's not that you're not stoked, but you're like, all right, this was a cool record a year ago when I wrote it, but I'm already on to new shit and I'm way excited about that. And you haven't even heard the last thing I did. So
yeah, I think it's a good problem to have though in our current situation because of the way that everything worked out. I mean, I'm always like, I have that attitude, right? I'm like, this is new. This is what I want to put out because it's like the most current version of me as a human being, right? Like I want that to be out. And it's not always bad to kind of have like people to push and pull against you on that because I would just blow my load on everything and just put it all out. And then like, people don't really have time to digest everything necessarily, if it's like if it's from a new artist, especially, right? Like they're more likely to just kind of skip through stuff. Like, and so some of the songs that I think are like deeper or I feel like meant a lot to me, sometimes they've been looked over in the past. I feel like with general people coming to the show and stuff, maybe because I just threw it all out there. I was like, all right, go. But I definitely don't like to be told what to do by any means. but it's I think the way that it's worked out right now has been really great, and I'm like I said, I'm sitting at a drum set right now in the studio making the next one. And I was able to write a lot because we had the waiting period, and we didn't have a whole lot of shows. We still played, quite a bit compared to most bands and stuff this last year. But I had a lot of time to like be creative and enjoy some downtime. So it's been like a transition for me too over the last year, like rediscovering how much I love creating and writing and sitting down and literally making ourselves laugh until we're crying from these new ideas and stuff. It's been a lot of fun.
It's funny you say that. That's kind of been a interesting theme kind of the last, I'll say 3 weeks for me. So, an episode we're dropping this week as of when we're recording, are with some of my friends that have been around, like that I've known for like 10 plus years. And, we were talking just kind of about finding the, I guess, inner child or innocence kind of that we seem to have kind of all lost as we get older. And I was like, yeah, like my podcast co-host and I do his other show. And in the last like 2 weeks, we've been childishly doing the Bane voice from like 10 fucking years ago.
We still do that.
And it's so stupid. And it's one of those where I'm surprised it's still holding on to its appeal of being funny. But, we were talking about how you kind of just lose this sense of being free to be creative and to make your own jokes, to find things that are funny and not necessarily rely on, hey, here's my phone, look at this cool thing I just found, and like showing you, like, but you're creating a bond and you're creating kind of more of a camaraderie with the people that you choose to be interactive with, which I don't know if we're finding this to be a thing we want, because, I'm in my mid 30s at this point. So it's like kind of you're almost further away from that than you are now going forward. And you're getting further away from kind of that innocence, or if it's also because of the pandemic where we've basically had to be starved of human interaction with people. And we realize how important those interactions are for ourselves.
Yeah. For me, it's always been fun to be in a band because you get to literally be the rawest version of yourself in the van or whatever on the bus or whatever you're doing. And, it really makes you tight with those folks because you know that they'd fight for you. If something's going down at the end of the night, who do I text and call? Literally my bandmates. You know what I mean? That's what it is. And so, like on Black Sheep, the drummer on that record is my drummer right now, Aaron, and he had only been in the band for like a couple of months at that time. So that was kind of like his proving grounds, I guess you'd say, And the guitar player, the lead player, David Willey, he's been in the band for about 3.5 years. And so, like, when you put us three together in a room, it gets dangerous because, like, the painfulness of the laughing, you have to literally separate yourselves at some points. And especially if we're, like, driving overnight and you get to that, like, delirious stage wherever you're literally laughing at anything and everything. That's what keeps me, honestly, on the road, is knowing that I need a good laugh and really enjoying that with each other. And that's been so much fun. And that stemmed off into more creativity for us, definitely for Black Sheep, but especially in this record that we're doing now too. And like whenever it does, make its appearance, I think it'll be pretty apparent the difference in like the bond, I guess, between us as players, if that kind of makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, I think that's kind of the interesting thing sometimes is you can have really great players be in a band together. Sometimes the connection's not there. I mean, to me, when I look at some of my favorite bands, they're like brothers in the truest of sense. Like, they have their own dialogue of sorts, but it also allows them the freedom to really push each other in interesting new ways, especially as they have more time together. The thing that was kind of interesting to me is you kind of talked about being a new artist. And so when I got shopped this new record before it was out, I was like, oh, I've never heard of this guy. And then I went just to see what I could find. And I was like, holy shit, you got like 4 other records out and have been doing this longer than a new artist, in the truest of senses. And I noticed in going back, while I think your sound has always been there, I think on Black Sheep, I feel like it feels more refined, more honed. Like it's the best parts of everything that led you to what would become Black Sheep musically.
Thanks. Yeah. And that is hard to understand for me. Like, especially as a younger artist, I was like, well, this is the best I can do at the time, but I'm a very competitive person. So like, I always want to beat myself and be better than what I did on the last thing. Like even my first crappy stuff of putting out, I'm like, we got to go back. We got to do something better. I mean, that's why we're sitting in the studio right now while we're talking about Black Sheep. It's because like, I'm trying to get better at that and just beat that. Like I've always been that way. I grew up playing sports, trying to be competitive. And for me, it's healthy. It keeps me moving. I don't like to sit still. I like to keep moving and keep going. And, early on, especially, you make a record and your mom and your grandma are like, all right, cool. This is awesome. Good job, buddy. And you're like, all right, cool. I should be having people come to shows now. I should be, getting some kind of recognition. Like it's easy to feel like that early on if you get in the wrong headspace. So I've tried to keep myself out of that, like nobody owes you shit. Right. What I mean? Nobody owes you shit. And so learning that it keeps your skin thick and really against yourself to like be like, we got to get better. We got to do better. And I'm a fan of music before any of this. Like I grew up going to concerts with my dad. My dad's the one that got me into like loving music and loving live shows. And so I've always wanted to learn how to give people that feeling. Right. Of the fellowship of the show and like the vacation that you get just from going to a show or even listening to a record with your friends and sitting back and hanging out for a bit and being like, dude, I feel refreshed now. I can go about my day or my next day with a good smile on my face because no matter what happened before I listened to that record or went to that show, like this is a new page for me and a new chapter. I love when music does that for me. And I'm trying to find still as an artist a way for like to reciprocate that to other listeners.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with that though is like I remember, and like off to the side over here, I have records. And so it's like I grew up when we weren't inundated with 4, 5, 6 singles before a record comes out. You got probably the one, maybe 2 if you were lucky. You had to go buy everything. You couldn't just access it at the drop of a phone. Like if you literally were like, oh, who's this? Like, hey Siri, who's this? You couldn't do shit like that. And so you had to be an active participant in being a music fan. And I don't feel like that's the case anymore. So I feel like it's hard for an artist, and probably a newer one too, who's trying to figure out how to do these things. Cause like, as you were talking about, I'm still creating. I want to create. I want to outdo what I'm doing. In my head, I'm like, oh, well, I feel like you would kind of be more apt to probably want to follow like kind of the hip hop kind of scene, and I guess pop music as well to a degree, but like dropping EPs every 4, 5, 6 months. It allows you to put out what you're working on. It doesn't have as long of a shelf life of like, we waited a year or more to put this out. It's pretty fresh. It's pretty current. It's kind of where I'm at. And it still allows you to tour and earn your fans, that way, the traditional way. But I feel like that's kind of the best of both worlds at this point. But unfortunately, a lot of people aren't able to go to the studio possibly as much as that would require, due to either being on the road or whatever. So I always think it's kind of a hard road that you guys, a fine line you have to balance of what kind of an artist do I want to be and how do I want to represent myself?
For me, it still ties back into like the old school. I say old school, but like old school to me, songwriters that I grew up on, like Tom Petty, he was putting out records and it was like you could see a chapter in the band's life and like kind of what they sounded like. And then, you see like the Hard Promises record, and then you go into like just jump way forward to the Mojo stuff. So totally different sounds, but it's still like guitar, groovy, boom. But whenever you listen to those records, or whenever I listen to them, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I feel like you see a little bit of the snapshot of like where they were tone wise, obviously working in different places and stuff. But I've put out an EP before, and like that's how I started, was kind of doing the EP thing. I actually pulled my first one offline because it sucked so much ass. But I want to tell stories, and like I've always loved writing as a kid. I remember being in 4th grade, like writing class is my favorite, and the teachers would be like, "Hey, you got to write a 2-page paper," and all the kids would be like, "Fuck," and then I'd be like, That's it. Can I give you 4? Can I give you 4 pages? I'll ramble for days.
Right.
So I find myself doing that when I'm talking to new folks too. I'll get in some deep wormhole, and then I'm like, they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about or where I'm going with this. But for me, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because going back to the album thing, right? Like, I love putting out the full story of the album because it's a more complete picture. And I love the process of picking the track listing. Like on Black Sheep, we really did that, of trying to give you like the wave, right? Some of the songs transition in and out of each other with different effects and whatnot. Like, they were very specifically placed. And I'm doing that again on this next one too. There's actually like a lot of storylines that are intertwining. And I did that on the record before too. We weren't as good at making that happen as a team yet, you know?
Right. I think that's kind of actually something interesting that I noticed about Black Sheep is kind of the visual accompaniment of it right now. So as of when we're recording, you dropped Line to Myself probably 3-4 hours ago at this point. And I love that speaking of carryover, there's the carryover from Happier Alone, in which in this video, you guys are all wearing your own shirts, but they're all too small. In the Happier Alone video, in the Happier Alone video, you guys are all wearing ref shirts. And it's funny because like both videos are kind of amusing. They have comedic elements to it, which is interesting because lyrically, both of those songs aren't really funny. They're quite actually a stark contrast to what you're really seeing. So out of curiosity, what are some of maybe your comedic influences that would bring out these visuals that you wanted to accompany the music with?
I'm glad you actually brought that up and said that, because that right there has been one of my goals with the videos is and the branding of, like, if you look at the album cover and stuff, and there were some singles before that came out where, so let me start there and then I'll get to that, right? So remind me where we're going to, because I might forget in a minute. But like the artwork for Cave In and Dopamine Drop, it's a picture that my buddy Dalton Latham from Oklahoma City, he drew, and it's a priest skeleton, and he's holding out a cocaine baggie with the cross in it. And it's like, is he selling drugs? Is he selling religion? Is he selling what? And I was like, he's selling comfort. And so on Black Sheep, I have a line that says, comfort is a hard drug. I think it's like, I hate how it sneaks up. I hate how it holds you down. Comfort is a hard drug. Is it money that keeps you around? And for me, that art really like resonated with me, and the lyrics of Black Sheep and the whole theme of it of, hey, are we sitting here because we're comfortable, or we need to challenge ourselves and go do something that we want to do? And so that artwork, let's go fast forward to the next one that we put out, I think was Deja Vu. It's the same character dressed with like a skeleton robe, but he's actually holding this geometric shape. And that geometric shape is my tattoo, one of my tattoos that I've had for a really long time. It's just kind of like a non-stop cube, right? Okay. And it reminds me of how everything feels the same if you get stuck in the same pattern, the same circle. And that was the theme of Deja Vu. So I had this tattoo a long time ago, and then I was like, let's put that character with that. And I've always loved metal, and like, especially like 80s rock and metal and stuff, like the classic shit. I got a Whitesnake tattoo on my thigh. Like, that's I love it. And I wanted that character to transition into me for like the actual album. So that's why the album, I'm like coming halfway out of the water, and you see half of a skeleton, but half of it is kind of a real animated face. So
I wanted to keep that metal inspired too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've had people say before, it's funny, like the stark contrast between some of the seriousness of the songs and some of the like maybe niceness of the songs. I don't even like Settle Down is kind of a pleasant listen.
Right.
But then if you look at like the artwork for the album, you're like, what in the fuck? How did this connect on this record? You know? But I was very serious in writing those lyrics, and I believe in those lyrics. And on the lyrical side, I've always wanted to like go down to the deepest parts that I can of the feelings and the emotions and stuff. And I'm not a very emotional person on the outside. I'm always like having a good time. Fuck it, whatever, you know, like, but you know, my wife can tell you like, deep, like past that, I'm always thinking about stuff. My mind just races further and further down the hole.
Same.
So, you know, especially if I like sit around and get stoned by myself and it's late, I'm thinking about the worst possible outcomes of things. And so, to get that out, I like to write those songs and to let those feelings and thoughts and fears just live in that song. That way I can sing it, feel good about feeling that feeling again, and then move the fuck on with my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with the music videos, I wanted to have like the relief of, it feels good to laugh. I want it to feel like it does on the road.
Right.
Because we laugh our asses off on the road. Even though the songs are serious, the riffs are pretty fucking heavy in a lot of songs. And so are like the taglines, right? Like, I want to break people's hearts in as least amount of words as possible on a black and white piece of paper. I would love, like, whenever I die, if somebody like was just read my lyrics and be like, damn, that hurt, I'd be like, all right, I did my job here. You know, that for me, that would be a great, accomplishment. And I don't want it to like always be feeling like everything associated with me is just down in the dumps. Like, oh man, this guy's always sad, right? So bands like the Foo Fighters and Blink-182 and Bowling for Soup, they always had funny ass videos, right? And some of the Foo Fighter songs are pretty damn deep. I'm a huge Dave Grohl fan. And actually on Good Side, Good Side is a song off Black Sheep. That was like, that's my tip of the hat to Foo Fighters. That was me growing up on them. And I was like, all right, because that song was actually supposed to be on my last record. Didn't end up making the cut. I got outvoted on that one, which I'm glad I did, because we totally changed the layout of it. And I was like, okay, if I wanted to do this, how would I do this in a new way? And I was on a big Foo Fighters kick. So I'm like, I think we should maybe make it sound like this. And it ended up fitting in. But it was just like a tip of the hat to that. And again, I've always loved like their comedic music videos and not taking it too seriously. And I think it also makes it lets people that don't know us like actually see us for who we are, right? We're clowns, we're jokers, So I would think hopefully we maybe more approachable, just as human beings, if you see those kind of funny things, which is funny and interesting to kind of walk that line, because a lot of the old school rock dudes that were like rock gods, you didn't really know anything about them. You only saw whatever the news said about them. And then
they wanted out there.
Right. And then over the last however many years, quite a long time, like people have become more accessible because of things like this, because of the internet, right? The more easier to do interviews and see things. So I don't want everybody in my business, and like, I want my own personal space, personal life. But I also, as a fan of music and a fan of other artists, I like to see what people are really like behind the scenes, behind the microphone, Right. So I hope that those videos bring that out and people can laugh and show it. And the storyline still is not just to be funny. I mean, if we're talking about lying to myself, which is kind of where we started this whole rant, I came up with the idea of, that's our guitar player. That's who's the main character, Willie. And I actually wrote the song about him. He was like the main inspiration behind the whole lyrical start and everything. And I wanted him to start like, all right, I'm a big dude. I'm gonna go get whatever chicks I want at this bar, and then just keep getting turned down. And just unknowingly, he's turning into a clown as it goes on. And he still thinks like, no big deal. Like, I still got me. And then the moment that he realizes he's a clown, it's almost like you're kind of laughing at him, because he was just a douche for the entire first half, trying to hit on chicks and like intrude space. The guy that you don't ever want to hang out with at the bar. You're like, oh God, that's not my friend. I don't know him. But then, so you're kind of like, man, I don't like this guy. But then he finds out that he's a clown. There's this moment of like, oh, I'm all alone. So for me as a viewer, I'm kind of like, oh man, I kind of feel for the guy. Like, I've been there before, even though he deserved it. Right. And then he comes up out of that hallway, and then all of a sudden the band is changed, and there's like another moment of acceptance. It's like, hey, we're all clowns too. Mm-hmm. You're with us. Come on, bud. And then all those people that were turning him down at the beginning of the video, now they're on the front row. They're doing their thing. And then he finds his match with like the sexy clown at the end. Like, I put all those things in there specifically so you kind of had like a roller coaster of emotions. And that is very hard to put into like a 3.5 minute video. It's like really hard.
Well, I think you kind of sometimes have to do that even with the song if you're trying to, for lack of a better term, write a pop kind of song, like where you're like, okay, we need it to be 3.5 minutes or less, and I need to convey all the things I want to say that are poignant to me while still having some form of a pop structure. Here's, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro kind of a thing. So, but it was interesting in watching that video that I was like, oh, it's almost like, obviously he's turning into a clown because he's acting like one, but it's almost even in the, like you said, I kind of looked at it more of, we sometimes put out this false image of who we are, lying to ourselves in that sense. And it isn't until we are real with who we are that you can find acceptance and people will want to be around you because you are unapologetically then who you are, and you're more comfortable being who you are, and other people will see that you're not trying, and they'll be more gravitated to it. So good to know that I basically was inferring exactly what you were trying to put out there.
Yeah. And I'm glad that it came across that way. That's well said. And that's where lying to myself started. It's like, I mean, the lyrics they're based around that. It's like, all right, I'm going to find something good for me. And then when he thinks he finds it, it's like, hey, this is it. This is going to last forever. This is the one. And then it's like, no, it's the internal struggle of, I am lying to myself. I am not going to get what I want. What the fuck am I doing? I'm an ass clown, like that kind of a thing. and then the release. And this is one thing that I've really enjoyed doing now that Willie's been in the band, is finding moments to like release that stress or that pressure, not only through like a chorus or lyrics, but through some guitar solos. Like we specifically build those guitar solos and progressions to be, hey, here's the release of the song. And like, there is some relief in the way that this progression changes. Sometimes you don't even have to sing it. It's a really beautiful thing.
I think you did a really good job of that. And it was one of the first songs that I kind of really noticed that aspect of your songwriting was on Cabin, like, because there just seems to be this tension between you and whoever. And then you're finally like, I wish you would fuck me like you gave a damn. And I was like, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Maybe that line doesn't necessarily resonate where I'm like, yeah, I wish you would fuck me like you gave a damn. But it's almost like you can apply that to other things. Like, I wish you would treat me like you gave a damn. I wish you would do, like, it's just feeling like someone actually values you in some way, shape, or form.
And that word that you just said, treat, that was actually the first lyric that I put. I wish that you would treat me like you gave a damn. But to me, it didn't seem like I had enough bite.
Yeah.
And so me and Willie are sitting in the room, and we're, he's got the riff, and I'm throwing this melody and these lyrics together. I'm like, oh, I wish you would love me like you gave a damn. I wish you'd treat me like you gave a damn. And we were just joking around, having a good time, couple beers and stuff. And he's like, why don't you just say fuck, man? And I was like, you know what? That's a great fucking idea. So that's Willie's one lyric on that song. He had the riff and everything, but I'm usually coming up with the melodies and the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like kind of stuck. I'm like, love doesn't do it. I don't want to say love. I don't want to say treat. But that's the first word that I actually thought about was treat. And then he's like, why don't you just say fuck, man? I'm like, that's so fucking easy. And now whenever we play that song live, that's like one of the biggest moments in the show. It just has happened like that, because when else do you get to scream that lyric out with a bunch of people, or really in front of anyone, right? If you said that to anyone, your friends, family, especially a significant other, dude, it's pretty much over. You're getting slapped in the face, beat up, something. But to be able to like release that energy kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. Like, doesn't that feel good? Just like, I wish that you would fuck me like you gave a damn. Yeah. And then the big riff.
Yeah,
right?
The big riff. And I noticed that like after that, like I kind of paid attention that there seems to be like, you do a really great job of building tension and then the big payoff. And usually it's this giant fucking riff and like a kind of like a slow thing, just to kind of like almost like two shots, like boom, boom. And then you're like, fuck.
Yeah. I'm hit.
Yep.
I'm hit. Yeah. There's a couple moments, and that's the next verse is like, do you still, so after we say, do you wish that you fuck me like you gave a damn, I go, do you still feel all right? Do you still have the nightmares that keep you quiet? I think like creeping in your mind, ringing like the church bells, Jesus Christ. And so
I felt like a second bite at that same apple. Cause like cause the way you were like, Jesus Christ, it's almost like even still, like I'm kind of burying myself to you. And I'm just kind of like, I know I just said some shit. How are you? Like, are you there? You feeling anything? Like, come on. Like, I just basically am telling you shit. And like, even the way you deliver that, it was almost like I said, a second bite at that same big impact moment. So it was just really cool. And like I said, to have it be so quick in the record to where you're kind of setting up kind of the foundation, I think, of what you're trying to do musically, like where you're leaving these big impactful moments, but you're not quick to let someone get out of that. You're letting them sit in that. You're letting it resonate, letting them stew in it. And then just in case you didn't quite get it, you're like, hey, here we are again. Yeah. Don't forget.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're saying that, because I mean that's what we were trying to do. So I'm glad people are understanding that. As a
Hopefully.
songwriter, it's like you don't know if people are gonna get that or not that I give a shit if they. I mean, I hope they love it, right? I hope they love it. But if like we've had enough people that have been like, oh, this is shit, this is crap, whatever. I'm past. That's whatever. I don't even care. But it is like a really cool moment whenever I get to have conversations like this and somebody is like, hey, is this what this is about? I kind of felt that. And this moment, that moment, I'm like, damn, I guess the dots connected. It's like, what was that game whenever I was little, there was a game, there was like Operation where you had to like heart. Yeah. It's like, you just hardly, oh, all right, sweet. Got the moment.
Something that was a little bit interesting too. I have to say, when we were trying to set this interview up initially, obviously Texas had gone through a really weird snowstorm kind of whatever and just fucked everything up. But it got pushed back because you had just gotten married. So I know you were going to do, like your honeymoon or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that. I was like, oh, I thought this record was kind of about a breakup. So the fact that it was like, I'm getting this record that to me felt like the end of a relationship and one that just wasn't doing well because of probably, you being out on the road and all that kind of stuff, especially given some of the lyrics to these songs. It's one of those where I was like, oh, well, that's surprising.
Yeah. I was surprised she stuck with me too. I'm a really lucky guy, really. And I don't think anybody else would put up with my shit the way that she does. So I give her props like above anybody else for putting up with my ass. And I just got lucky, man. I really did. I got lucky, and I still write sad songs, and I still write. I mean, there's some shit on the next record that y'all are gonna laugh at if you're obviously a lyrical fan, and so just the storylines and stuff. And sometimes I'll be sitting there with my wife. I'll be like, "Hey, this is fucked up. What do you think about this?" And she'll be like, "Ouch, that hurt. It's good then." So like, I know though if it hurts somebody whenever you say it. I mean, literally the song is going to hurt you to hear this, right? It's like, I hope this record is so fucking good that it hurts you to think about, what could have been, like that kind of a thing, right? So it's just the brutal honesty that I really strive for and love. And whenever I'm writing something, if I'm writing with somebody else in the room and I don't see their eyes light up right after a line, then I know it's not it. And it's important for me to keep myself accountable and honest in doing that, to not let a shitty lyric slip through, right? Because sometimes you're like, placeholder, it'll be a placeholder, it'll be there, and then you come back and you're like, well, maybe it's good enough. And I just try to keep myself from doing that, really. And I go through that process with my wife. I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And she'll literally just be like, and I'll be like, all right, not good enough. but if she's like, ow, I'm like, fuck, that's it. Let's do it. So
I feel like that would be the interesting thing about, because like my wife, basically I do this a lot. So it's like a lot of times, I'll find my way of going to do something, or I like to call it, probably not an apropos title, but she likes watching the Real Housewives of whatever. So I'll be like, well, if you're going to watch your house hoes, I'm going to go work on my podcast or something and go do something else. Or in some instances, like, we're actually Thursday, we're going to Texas. We're going to San Antonio.
How long are you going to be there?
We're going to be there until Monday.
I'm playing in San Antonio on Saturday. So hit me up, dude.
Okay. We're going to a Spurs game, but other than that, I don't think we really have much. I think a dive bar was on our itinerary. No shitting.
Yeah. We're playing at this place called the Rustic in San Antonio on Saturday night. Are you a Spurs fan?
I just like sport. I'm wearing a Braves hat. I haven't been able to go to a sporting event. Obviously, just like everybody else, in like a year. So I love going to random sporting events to just kind of see things. Like for me, like I've been a basketball fan for a very long time. Dennis Rodman was one of my favorite players. I got into him when he played on the Spurs. Nice. But for me, it's more of, I could have gone Thursday night to go see the Clippers, which would have been cool to see, obviously, some of the biggest players in the NBA on the Clippers side. But we're going to hang out with Mark from Nothing More that night, the first night we're there, and go to Weathered Souls and check out some other places and so forth. But it was a thing
Nice.
where I was like, I just want to go. And for me, I really just want to see Pop coach one game, just to be like, I saw one of the most legendary coaches in the NBA of all time. And my wife,
Yeah.
they're playing the Bulls that night, so I have a Rodman Bulls jersey and my Spurs jersey. So I'm going to give my wife whatever one she wants to wear, and I'll wear the other one because I figure
Dude,
I'm either way.
Yeah, I grew up like around San Antonio, right? So we've been big Spurs fans, but I was a huge Michael Jordan fan, like in the early '90s and late '90s, and so I was always asking my dad, like, "Hey, can I please have a Michael Jordan jersey?" And they were always like, "No, you can only get Spurs jerseys." So I ended up getting one. I think he finally caved in and got me one, and so we went to a couple Spurs games growing up, but I remember going to one particular one with my dad, my grandpa. And like we met my grandpa, pick him up in the car or whatever, and I'm wearing a Bulls Michael Jordan one, and he just so he had to sit by me both of them had to sit on each side of me, and I'm just a little kid in the Bulls jersey in San Antonio, you know. But yeah. I've always, it's been fun growing up and going to all those things around Texas. That was like my thing too, like go see this, go see that live event, boom, live show, just always moving, you know. So that's cool though. But yeah, hit me up, dude. We'll be there Saturday night. Yeah, but it's been a busy couple months between, you know, we recorded a couple new videos, did obviously the wedding and the honeymoon, had a bachelor party, and you know, ended up coming right back into the studio. Literally, I flew back from the honeymoon, played 2 shows as soon as we got back, and went straight to the studio. And I haven't been home in like a month and a half, so I'll be home for like 1 day, and then we're coming back up here. So
what because that's the interesting thing. When we finally started booking everything for our flight or for our trip, Texas officially opened up 100%. So I think it's only been to maybe 3 weeks at this point, as of when we're talking. Is the show Saturday that you're gonna play? Is this one of the first ones back?
No, we've been playing some back. We've just been playing different venues than usual. We've been playing a lot of open air venues, and we've honestly been playing a lot of venues that are larger capacity than we used to because they weren't at full capacity, right? So people that used to be able to hold 2,000, they were down to whatever 1,000, that kind of a thing. So everybody could space out. But man, we've been just trucking it. And the reason this month we've only played like 5 shows, but that's because we're in the studio making a new record, and I didn't want to blow out my voice. So
are you basically live demoing some of the material? Like if maybe you're kind of like, do we play this part 2 times? Do we take out this part, bring the chorus back in? Or are you kind of basically live demoing stuff right now? Is that kind of also an exercise of what you're doing?
Yeah, it is. It is. We've been doing that for a couple months now. And another thing that really just in the last week we saw is we've been playing a lot of these songs off of Black Sheep now for 4 or 5 months. And it shows some even longer than that. And they knew like the singles that had come out, but there was still like Lying to Myself, Hurt You to Hear This, Don't Feel a Thing, Settle Down, Black Sheep, something new. Like a lot of these songs, people just didn't know unless they'd seen us before live. So I was wondering, coming back to shows directly after the CD release, I was like, are they going to know them already or not? And we played Houston, Texas last weekend, and like every single song that we played, I was like, damn, I guess people are actually paying attention now, which was a really, really cool thing because it's never happened to us before like that, you know?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting out, and because like we were actually looking at trying to go to a show, but the funny thing is my wife last night when I was doing a podcast with somebody, she goes, Diplo's in town, and I was like, not really what I want to go to, but like I haven't seen a show in like over a year, so I'm kind of like, beggars can't be choosers, I guess.
And like, ours is free, come to ours.
I mean, I wouldn't care if it was $10. I would still go to that over $300 to just hear whoopee whoop noises and stuff like that, and be around a bunch of people on drugs, probably.
Yeah, it's probably what'll happen. I don't know, man. Gotta to each his own. I could see myself having fun at either one, but my favorite place to be is like front row at a Whitesnake show, getting my face shredded off. That's pretty much my favorite.
Fun story. I'm still sitting on my Joel Hoekstra episode because I didn't think it was very good.
Really?
Yeah, and I've had Reb on twice, and those were always great. And I figured Joel would be the same, and he's just like, I tried getting him to just kind of open up and just talking about different stuff, and just didn't seem really into it. Like I was like, Reb's very old school. Once every like plug in my gear, here's my head, here's my cab, here's my pedals, like everything's tangible. He's not using Kempers and so forth. But I see that you do, how do you find that you like recording that way, or do you prefer to have all your stuff? And he's like, well, I mean, because of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, that's why I need to have like the Kempers and so forth, because they're more portable. And then, at that point I was like, oh, speaking of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like, they're doing this big live stream event, is this going to be one of the opportunities to have basically both touring productions together to do a once in a lifetime full show with everybody? And he's like, well, no, it's just going to be the regular people who write everything. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I look stupid now, but it's like, the point wasn't to basically be like, I understand the band that records everything is not the band you're in. Like, you are one of the other touring band that covers the other half of the coast, while the main original band tours the other side. But I figured this is an opportunity for once in a lifetime to get all of you together to do so. Well, no, that just wouldn't be practical. It's like,
it's probably expensive. I don't know. I don't know how any of that works.
But it was just like one of those things where I was like, okay, well, just at least indulge me in this conversation. Just be like, no, we're not, but that would be really cool. We've talked about maybe trying to do something like that, maybe with a live stream where we're able to kind of get some of the players together that don't get to play with each other, and really kind of make this a big blowout thing with Trans-Siberian Orchestra and so forth. And it just, dude was giving me nothing. And I was like, God damn.
Hey, maybe that's the beauty of honest, open interviews, is that sometimes it's just like that, so then you enjoy the good. So.
It just sucks, because it's like, I don't want to put that out and have everyone be like, this guy knows nothing. And I'm like, I knew so much that I just basically walked myself into corners, I guess, or painted myself into corners. But I always enjoy like when these are more like this, where it's like you just kind of go and the person actually is open to talking at length and giving you some of themselves in the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's important for me, just especially, I know earlier we said the thing about, new artists versus whatever, a couple records, but just, I feel like when I say the word new, it's like, I feel like we just hit our stride, and we just found out what we wanted to sound like and started being confident in that in the last 2 years, for me. Because for me, I was writing. I didn't really have the first record. I didn't really have a band. It was me playing drums and guitar and all that shit. And then had a band for a couple of them, but then the band changed over and all these things. But when I mentioned, the word new, I guess it's because people keep referring to me that in so many ways, because they don't do the homework like you do. They just go, first record. I'm like, not first record. But, and it's also cool to have a lot of experience on the road that some people don't, right? So like, we can hold our shit together and actually do a tour. Mm-hmm. We can hold our shit together and actually, people don't think about that, right? People think, oh, yeah, I'm gonna make a record. I'm gonna go out and do a tour. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fun. Dude, just fucking wait until you're like a couple weeks into this thing. You haven't been home. You've been in the same, whatever, van or bus or Sprinter as the same 4 or 6 people. And you just have to keep going. It's like never stopping. All right, you finish the show, drive to the next one. Finish the show, drive to the next one. Like, it really does. You have to learn how to pace yourself. And I didn't understand that at the beginning either. So now balancing that with home life and now the wife and the dogs and all this kind of fun stuff, and it's like, where do I have time for anything? So I'm in the stage right now of self-indulgence in the studio and enjoying, like, being able to say, I don't want to do anything but just fucking make music, So we're making time for stuff like this for sure, But a lot of other things, I'm just like, dude, if this record sucks that I'm making, you're not gonna, like, nobody's gonna make money off of it. So you guys just need to just let me hang out and fucking do our thing for a little bit.
Well, kind of let you get back to your creative processes and Chipotle and all that I think is inevitably going to be there by now. Where can everyone find you, or whatever you'd like to plug online? And granted, we have I think the main thing down here that should tell you where everything, but maybe you got something else you'd like to plug.
I mean, just listen to the record is all I'm saying. That's all I really care about. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of shows coming up. We're about to announce another tour, or an actual tour. I can't give details on it until they find the fine print. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of that being announced here in the next week to 2 weeks, and we're going to be all over the country, really. So I'm pretty pumped about that. And yeah, man, I mean, it's just Austin Meade, Meade, whatever. Anywhere you can find me, but Black Sheep is just the start to where we're going. So
awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, man. Great talking to you. Hopefully we'll see you in San Antonio.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It will result in less listens. You're gonna see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're gonna see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks.